Good morning. Good morning again. All right. With John and Mike going here, this is another example of the incredible partnerships that we enjoy in the line of work that we do for this nation. I want to parcel it out a little bit because I got to save some for the intro of Mike in a few minutes here, but I got full appreciation for what the Reserve brings to the fight when I was a punk squadron commander doing these rainbow squadrons in Elliott, and they're monster squadrons, 24 Hercs, 48 crews, rainbow, Guard active duty reserve. And I learned early when it came to the Guard and Reserve, don't look at the rainbow chart and figure out how all the crews are coming in. Just trust it. It would be awesome and amazing. Fast forward as the vice commander at Travis Air Force Base, partnering alongside the mighty 349th and getting a full appreciation for you can't tell who's who on the flight line, on the flight deck, at the flight station, all right? The patches don't matter. Pure integration for how we fly, fix, and support airplanes, and that was pretty cool. On my staff, there is never one time where I ask anybody to leave the room. So the Guard and Reserve are fully integrated into my staff at the highest levels, and they are never invited out of the room, even when we're talking about the Guard and Reserve. And there is no Air Mobility Command without the total force and how we all three come together. The exceptional response to what has happened in the last 30 days could not have been done without enormous and dominating lift by our Guard and Reserve partners. And so it is indeed an honor this morning to introduce my friend, my partner, my wingman, John Healy, Chief of the Air Force Reserves.
Well, good morning, everybody. It was a big crowd the second wave, but the first wave, this was very similar to it. So maybe the last night's activities caught up again. So, one of the things that General Minahan said right off the bat, such a gracious welcome, and I appreciate it, was just trust it. And he trusts the Reserve right now. He trusts the Guard right now, and that's evident because of how effective we're acting as a total force. So General Minahan, thank you for the introduction. Thank you to the Airlift Tanker Association, General Earhart, your entire team. Thank you so much. General Fogelman as well, fantastic seeing you here, sir. To all of our other distinguished leaders, past and present, thank you so much. I've been in this community my entire career, and getting the chance to speak at ATA each year is, it pumps me up. I feel like this must be exactly what it's like to be U2 opening the Sphere for the first time. So, well, maybe not that, maybe more so like General Selva, General Minahan, and Gino Redman opening the Margaritaville last night. So, but many of you have heard me speak before. Most recently, sometimes I don't have a problem being a little bit direct with some stuff. As a lot of the things that came out of AFA was do your job, and I'm going to camp on that theme a little bit here. But first, I don't mind being a little bit direct. We've celebrated the 100th anniversary of air refueling this year, but the first thing I want to do is point out that, in fact, maybe it wasn't 100 years. We're looking back through the history logs, and air refueling started 102 years ago. So unbeknownst to me, but almost to the day, 12 November 1921, when two barnstormers flew two biplanes, including Frank Hawks, an Army Air Reserve service member, and a wing walker walked with a 5-gallon tank of gas and no parachute from one wing to the other and refueled the other aircraft. So now, while wing walking with a 30-pound fuel tank and no parachute is a curiosity, a morbid curiosity, an insane curiosity, it is an example of doing something innovative and imaginative to try to extend what we're able to do. Any amateur can do something once if it's crazy enough. The key to being a professional, as we all know, is the ability to do something reliably, on demand, at speed, and at scale. So we do recognize 1923 as the 100th anniversary of air refueling and the start of extending the range of our aircraft in the Mobility Air Command and mobility forces to get after expanded global reach, a capability we've continued to grow over these last 100 years. As I said, during AFA, I quoted Bill Belichick by saying, do your job. You know, find a unit, find a team, find out how that unit engages in mission, and build that high-performing team so that you can do your job. Do your job, and we're going to get the mission done. Professionals do their job every day, and they do it reliably. It's our job in the front couple rows here to ensure that realistic training is provided to each and every one of you out there to make sure that we're proficient at that job and can operate as part of a total force. That's what we're going to need to be successful in an era of great power competition. In the Air Force Reserve Command, we implemented a series of rally exercises starting back in 2020. Each year, we built on the rally idea. It initially started in 2020 during the height of COVID. Actually, when I was 22nd Air Force Commander, we were doing a going away party, 8 feet spacing with masks on, and we're trying to figure out how are we supposed to do currency and proficiency training for our crews amidst this. So we started spitballing. I said, well, we're physically separated. What can we do with aircraft? That evolved in about 4 months to 5 C-130 wings from the reserves and 1 from the West Virginia Guard, coming together in a relatively close location where only the operators and the maintainers had contact with each other. Each of the individual units were in a different station. They did a morning VTC to get their mission brief, and the only time they ever saw each other was in the air during a force rejoin. So through that practice of distributed operations, we got some high altitude drops in. We were able to get some task force resupply and personal extraction missions. So it was a success. It was all about trying to keep flying. But we took that concept and we moved forward a little bit. The next year, 21, we went out to Colorado, where we went to a range, Garfield County Airport in Rifle, Colorado, where over 100 airmen established an airbase. And they ended up practicing expeditionary skills, pilot communication, tactical combat casualty care. Our air crews ended up honing their combat airlift skills by the end of it, culminating with the C-130J landing on a remote highway in Wyoming, practicing austere locations. In 22, there was the rally in the swamp, where we went down to Keesler. This time we looked at airmen giving them limited time to plan real-time combat missions to get out the door with short to little information and notice. They also flew as if they were going into hostile airspace, practicing and rehearsing skills needed to operate in the Indo-PACOM theater, such as maritime combat search and rescue. Finally, in 23, we held Rally in the Pacific, the harshest of environments yet, Hawaii. Now, make no mistake, this wasn't your typical annual tour for 2 weeks, sipping Mai Tais at Duke's. We were actually farthest from the beach that you can imagine, on the Big Island and nowhere near any type of recreation activity. Over 400 reserve airmen made their way from across the United States, simulating 185 short tons of cargo movement. And we had security forces, force support, medical, supply, flight operations, and transportation all working towards and working with our Red Horse folks to not only move into theater and establish a base, but also to provide Red Horse relief to some of the areas as well. We moved into Hilo, and that's where we set up our main operating base, and then from there, we took advantage of the vast 9,000 square mile area AOR, setting up a FOB in Guam at Anderson, and then temporary contingency locations at Palau and in the Philippines. The team originally planned to set up a main operating base in Anderson, but unfortunately Typhoon Mawar had something to say about that after our Advon team had already started it. So what ended up coming of that was the flexibility and the agility needed to find someplace else to go quickly, which very well could be the case if we ever have conflict. The Advon team had 2 weeks to set up in the new location in Hilo, and we moved out and moved forward. Again, I think that flexibility, that agility was a lesson identified as well that we're going to carry forward. Rally in the Pacific challenged reserve airmen to conduct agile combat employment operations and provided them with real-world experiences in austere environments. We did JPADS drop, which was a priority of the Philippine Air Force commander as well as the PACAF commander. And having our airmen already in theater also allowed them to provide relief to Guam, as I stated, with the Red Horse unit. We've also got the 44th Aerial Squadron, which is our only reserve unit in the second island chain as a full-time mission. And with the Red Horse and the 44th, they set up a temporary location after the typhoon to ensure civilian exfiltration in a temporary evacuating recovery operations. From a reserve perspective, I see the need to get out to the field more and more and build pragmatic warfighting readiness. That's exactly why reserve airmen join the Air Force Reserve. It's not to come in on a weekend and do CBTs or do paperwork. They want to get out there. They want to get out there and do the mission. They want to do the job. They want to get dirty, they want to get sweaty, and they want to be engaged in that mission. If they get the opportunity to shoot a few rounds at a 7-meter target per the AMC Commander's directive or do some life-raft operations, all the better. It actually helps in recruiting and retention when we're able to get out there and do our job. Rally in the Pacific got a Reserve Airman relevant training and allowed them to support Guam after that devastating typhoon. The success of the Rally in the Pacific validates the hard work of 22nd Air Force and the planners that we have there, perpetuating this going forward, and I can't wait to see how we incorporate more effectively, efficiently in future operations with AMC and within the Air Force Reserve Command. Exercising with the command is only part of doing our job. We still need training that gives Reserve Airmen the chance to totally integrate with the regular Air Force and the Guard. But if we're given the opportunity, we've got to make sure that we're doing this in a joint training environment as well. That was the case this year with Resolute Sentinel 23, a combined joint total force exercise in South America with over 750 U.S. troops, more than 400 of which were from the Air Force Reserve. The Air Force component portion was called Patriot Fury. Patriot Fury tested XAB capabilities such as opening the airbase. Working closely with the members of the Air National Guard and AFSOC, reservists enabled ACE operations and planned and unplanned scenarios such as within multiple locations in South America. They worked around lake cargo flow, delayed Peruvian dips, and retrograde airlift to execute the missions as FRAG to make sure the exercise went on schedule. Patriot Fury saw Reserve's first FARP training and execution of non-special airlift ops with C-130s C-130s wet wing refueling and rearming A-10s within 30-minute goes. We also provided multi-capable airman training with members being responsible collectively for vehicle maintenance, communication, fuels, and security. This pushed them outside their comfort zone and took them away from their roles based on their core AFSC. Patriot Fury shows how indispensable the Air Force Reserve is and allows me to praise and give some bragging rights on the Air Force Reserve men and women. But most importantly, it reinforces that we can't do this alone. The regular component needs the reserve component to ensure that they're properly trained and integrated together regardless of the situation. In the Air Force, we need to ensure that the Air Force Reserve is always assured access, not assumed access. The Air Force Reserve provides operational surge capacity and strategic depth. However, in great power competition, we need to spin up with little to no notice. In a time of war, we will not have the luxury of detailed planning. We must be ready now. And we must continue to ensure that we're executing the authorities as we have for the last month in our relief in Israel. It should be a template going forward in terms of how we use a combination of reserve dollars, authorities, and MPA dollars to make sure that we get the right place on time. I've emphasized the need for training because training ensures we can be the professionals the nation needs. The Greek poet Archilochus wrote, "We do not rise to the level of expectation, but we fall to the level of our training." Training ensures that we are ready. And that's why when I took command of the Air Force Reserve Command, within an hour I published a task order with 2 priorities, ready now and transforming for the future. Since 9/11, the Air Force Reserve has demonstrated the ability to meet mobilization requirements in less than 72 hours. A recent example of this was in Operation Allied Refuge, where Air Force Reserve volunteer crews were at home station within 24 hours. Short time later, they're in Kabul with everybody else making decisions in a somewhat chaotic situation because we were ready at that time. We can see now, even more than ever, our mobility crews are responding to short notice requirements within the CENTCOM AOR in the Middle East and around the world. This is critical since the great power competition, time will be limited, and we're likely to face tough choices immediately from the onset of conflict. The recent crisis in Israel and AMC response shows how we must be ready. Members of the Air Force Reserve have volunteered to fill AMC taskers to date, and the Air Force Reserve has provided C-17s, C-5s, 130s, their crews, and ACS. The demand reserve support keeps increasing, We will always be there side by side with AMC, our active duty and Guard brothers and sisters, for all contingencies now and in the future. Being ready is just one aspect, though. We also need to transform to meet the needs in the future fight. If the U.S. Air Force had failed to continue transforming air refueling 100 years ago, it would have been slightly better than wing walking between a KC-46 and an F-22. We see that right now with contemporary air forces and their ability, or their lack of ability, to extend their reach because of a nascent air refueling capability. Instead, we continue to transform air refueling and evolve our tactics, our operations, and our strategy. That's why transforming for the future is the second part of my task order. We must continue to tackle the hard problems as a joint and total force, leveraging our experience and capability to be more agile and ultimately more lethal now than in the future, Mobility Guardian did exactly that. Let me highlight a couple of the contributions the Reserve made. We had 85 airmen who supported Mobility Guardian and deployed from 13 bases stateside. They provided airlift, airmed evacuation, combat camera support, and several exercise planners leading up to the exercise to ensure its smooth flow. Critically, the 315th Area Port worked 12-hour shifts through the July 4th weekend, getting 14 total force crews out of Charleston to ensure that we're ready to participate in the Pacific. Mobility Guardian 23 also had the first KC-46 integrated crew and maintenance with reserve and active duty members. The KC-46 provided more than just air refueling, provided BMC-2, ISR, and electronic warfare, and that's how we're going to use it in the future. The lessons learned from Mobility Guardian will shape how we operate in the Indo-Pacific, and our training will inform how we develop integrated planning to prepare for future conflict. This can be seen in the KC-46 Mission Planning Center, the MPC, which brings together total force and perfects how we're going to operate in the future. The MPC is a capability and not just a facility. It's a total force effort that fuses operations, intelligence, tactics, maintenance, and base communications to get fuel and mission-critical data to both our CAF and our MAF forces. There's an MPC currently under development at Travis Air Force Base. One of the leaders is a captain from the Air Force Reserve. He's the acting chief right now, working with REGAF and ARC members from McConnell, Seymour Johnson, and McGuire. During Mobility Guardian 23, Travis hosted 5 KC-46s and their crews and tested the deployed MPC operation to prove that its base could host an influx of service members and aircraft as they fought in the Pacific. The lessons we learned from these exercises are transforming how the Air Force gets after mission, and make no mistake, the Air Force is transforming right now. I was at Chrono last week with a few of the others in the front row here, and I can tell you that the Air Force that we grew up in is not the Air Force that we're going to have going forward, and I think that's a good thing. The Secretary and the CSAF are committed to ensuring that the Air Force the nation needs is one that we're moving towards. As we do that, I don't want us to lose sight of our airmen, especially here in this audience today. The idea of multi-capable airmen is at times vague and ambiguous. Each MAJCOM has a different idea of what multi-capable airmen are, and there's no set training to date. I know in the MAF community, we ask a lot of our load masters, of our crew chiefs, of our engineers, of our boom operators. I've seen it myself throughout the years. I've seen a load master get deputized by a flight nurse to provide critical care. I've seen crew chiefs scavenging on the ground during NEO operations to try and find a couple extra 1,000 pounds of fuel. I've seen and heard engineers help deliver babies. The skill sets you have are incredible, and we need to make sure we leverage every one of those skill sets to build that knowledge and help us develop what a multi-capable airman is in the future, help transform human capital development of the Air Force. In the Air Force Reserve, our command chief has prioritized the enlisted force development to ensure that the enlisted leaders we need are being developed. Doing that will be one facet of training multi-capable airmen. It will also allow us to tap into the innovation and adaptiveness of every one of the airmen in the Air Force, the Reserve, and Guard right here in this room. They've repeatedly showed how adaptive and innovative they can be through exercises and deployments. Our airmen are always ready to find value in their service, the value that leads to commitment and perseverance. This can be seen in the case of Tech Sergeant Stuart Martin. He's a member of the 68th Airlift Squadron, and in May 2017, he was badly injured in a motorcycle accident. Despite his injury, he maintained composure while coordinating his own care and ensuring that other bystanders were safe and out of harm's way. Unfortunately, he lost his leg during this accident. This did not deter him or hold him back. Tech Sergeant Martin continued to persevere through 6 surgeries, countless hours of recovery and physical therapy. Continually throughout this journey, he expressed his desire, his need to remain in the Air Force Reserve and to continue flying. He had the top cover of his squadron commander, and they worked hard to secure a waiver, and Tech Sergeant Martin returned to flying status as a C-5 loadmaster. And just recently, he ended up getting his worldwide deployment qualification back again. Tech Sergeant Martin demonstrates the commitment of our airmen. As leaders, we need to support them so they can get after the mission and do their job. As I wrap up, I encourage each of you to think about the critical role mobility air power will play in great power competition and be ready for it. The U.S. Air Force needs to operate reliably at speed. The ability of mobility forces to transport personnel and equipment over the tyranny of distance sends a message to our adversary that we can not only place a strike force anywhere in the world and resupply, but we can do it for as long as we see fit. I also want you to think about how we can transform and do our jobs better. 100 years ago, airmen like you thought about how we can accomplish refueling. We've gone a long way from carrying a gas can between two wing walkers. I can't imagine what the professionals here in attendance today and back in our units will come up with next over the next 100 years. Thank you again for the opportunity to come and speak to you again. Thank you for the gracious introduction and host. Have a great day.